The Why Nations Fail was written by Daron Acemoglu and James A. Robinson. Published in 2012, the book explores a fundamental question: why are some countries rich while others remain poor? On October 14, 2024, the authors were awarded the Nobel Prize in Economics for their research on how institutions shape national prosperity. Their work has had a lasting impact on economic and political thought, influencing both academic research and policymaking worldwide. Acemoglu, an economist, and Robinson, a political scientist, have spent years analyzing the historical development of different nations to understand why some succeed while others fail. Their research spans multiple regions and time periods, uncovering patterns that show how institutions either drive or hinder economic progress. The central argument of their book is that a nation's wealth is not determined by its geography, culture, or natural resources, but by its institutions, the rules and systems that govern economic and political life. Countries with strong, inclusive institutions tend to create stable environments for businesses and individuals to thrive, while those with extractive institutions often remain trapped in cycles of poverty and corruption. To support their arguments, the authors use historical and contemporary examples, ranging from ancient civilizations to modern economies. They discuss how the political and economic systems of different nations have influenced their development trajectories, comparing cases where inclusive institutions led to long-term prosperity with those where extractive institutions resulted in stagnation and collapse. For instance, England's Glorious Revolution of 1688 led to the establishment of more inclusive institutions that spurred long-term economic growth, whereas Spain's centralized and elite-controlled economy failed to develop in the same way. The book's main argument is that nations thrive when they have inclusive institutions. These are systems that allow people to participate in economic and political life fairly. When a country enforces strong property rights, ensures equal legal treatment, and allows businesses to compete freely, it creates incentives for productivity and innovation. Governments in these nations listen to their citizens and allow them to have a say in decisions. This creates a cycle of growth and innovation, helping the country become wealthier over time. Historical examples include the United States, where democratic institutions have supported entrepreneurship and technological advancement, and Botswana, which successfully leveraged strong governance structures to foster economic stability. On the other hand, extractive institutions are the reason why some nations fail. These are systems where power is concentrated in the hands of a few who use their control to enrich themselves instead of helping the country grow. In places with extractive institutions, corruption is common, and ordinary people have little opportunity to improve their lives. Businesses may be forced to pay bribes, and property rights may not be secure, which discourages innovation and investment. Instead of working for the benefit of all, leaders in these countries make policies that keep them in power, often at the expense of their people. Examples include the economic stagnation in the Congo due to its history of colonial exploitation and dictatorial rule, and the persistent inequality in many Latin American countries that have struggled to break away from elite-controlled economies. One of the key historical examples the authors use is the difference between North and South Korea. Despite sharing the same culture and geography, North Korea is poor, while South Korea is rich. The reason? South Korea has inclusive institutions that encourage businesses, protect rights, and allow citizens to participate in politics. North Korea, on the other hand, is controlled by an authoritarian regime that suppresses freedom and restricts economic opportunity. This stark contrast highlights the importance of institutions in shaping a country's success. The authors emphasize that such disparities cannot be attributed to cultural differences, but rather to the fundamental differences in political and economic systems. The authors also compare the histories of the United States and Latin American countries. When European settlers arrived in North America, they built societies where more people had opportunities to own land and participate in decision-making. Over time, this led to stronger democratic institutions and economic growth. In contrast, many Latin American countries were shaped by systems where a small elite controlled land and power, limiting opportunities for most people. As a result, these nations struggled with inequality and economic instability. The book also draws parallels between post-colonial development in different regions, showing how the institutional legacies of colonial rule played a crucial role in determining future prosperity. Another powerful example comes from colonial Africa. European powers set up extractive institutions that exploited local resources and labor without benefiting the local population. Even after gaining independence, many African countries inherited weak institutions, which made it difficult for them to develop strong economies. This explains why some African nations, despite having abundant natural resources, still face poverty and instability today. The authors argue that breaking free from this legacy requires significant political and economic reforms that replace extractive institutions with more inclusive ones. The book also discusses how institutions can change. The authors explain that while bad institutions can trap nations in a cycle of poverty, change is possible when people demand better governance. Sometimes revolutions or major events shake up existing power structures, leading to reforms. However, change isn't easy, and history shows that many attempts at reform fail because powerful elites resist losing their control. For example, the Arab Spring movements demonstrated that while people can push for change, deeply entrenched political structures often make lasting reforms difficult to achieve. The authors suggest that successful institutional change requires sustained pressure from civil society and political leaders who prioritize national interests over personal gain. Acemoglu and Robinson highlight that even wealthy nations need to be careful. If their institutions become less inclusive, they could face decline. For example, the authors warn that growing inequality and increasing political influence of the rich in countries like the United States could weaken their inclusive institutions over time. This serves as a reminder that prosperity isn't guaranteed. Countries must actively work to maintain fair and open systems. They caution that even democracies can regress if institutions erode, pointing to historical cases where once thriving economies entered long-term decline due to institutional decay. Overall, Why Nations Fail offers a powerful explanation for why some countries grow rich while others remain poor. It argues that the key to prosperity lies in creating inclusive institutions that give everyone a chance to succeed. By looking at history and real-world examples, the authors show that no nation is doomed to failure. Change is possible if institutions are reformed in the right way. The book's insights are relevant not just for governments, but for anyone who wants to understand how societies work and what can be done to create a better future.